I am talking to you today about access management for the 21st century, and I do apologise because this is going to sound very dull, but I'm going to do my absolute best to make it an entertaining piece of information. So, tiny bit of background. As you all know, pretty much journals as a publishing subdivision started moving online in the early 90s. We focused very much on organisational access control through IP. We were selling to institutions, not to individuals. So the users, our readers, had fixed computers in libraries, in offices, and over time we've kind of made some changes so people can get access through VPN or Shibboleth or Easy Proxy, but it's really not working anymore. Access control is not functional for the world that we live in today. So before I get too far into this, I'm going to try and give you some definitions because I've been looking at this subject for a number of years now and I hear a lot of confusion, so let's try and eliminate that. Identity. How many identities do you think you have? Hands up if you think you've got one identity. Nobody? 2? 5? Okay. You have one identity. You have lots of identifiers. I tried to start a list yesterday of how many different identifiers I have, and I lost track at about 25 because I got really bored of making a list. Your Facebook account, your Twitter account, your LinkedIn account, these are all identifiers that contribute to your identity as an individual. They are attributes of your identity. And those attributes of your identity might not just be identifiers, but might be entitlements. So what you are permitted to read or do based on that identifier. So you take your identity and the credentials or authentication identifiers within that identity and submit that to get into a site, and that's the process of authentication. Quite straightforward. And based on additional information that the site holds about you or the access management system holds about you, you will be authorized to either read content or make use of tools. Really easy, right? So let's take our hypothetical Jeff. He is landing at journal.com. He's based in the library, so his IP credentials are just passed straight from the journal.com website into the IAMS. IAMS stands for Identity and Access Management System. It doesn't mean a pet food. Sorry. The IAMS confirms Jeff's institutional identity, and he's now authenticated. This is great. Jeff has no idea that this has happened. As far as he's concerned, he's on the journal, he's got access to everything. But this is happening in the back end. Once he's been authenticated based on his IP, Journal.com then says, oh, can you tell me what he's entitled to read? This is still completely invisible to Jeff. Totally invisible. And the IAMS confirms the IP's entitlements. Now this is important. Jeff is not getting access to stuff that he as an individual can read. He's getting access to stuff that his institution has purchased. And that's fine. If you're only connected to one institution and you're doing this through an IP recognition, you get your institution's content. If you have multiple institutional affiliations, what are you going to do? Go from institution to institution and log in at the IP address of each institution to get all the different types of content you're entitled to? So let's think a bit more about this problem space. Off-campus access. Everybody knows it's a problem. We've got initiatives all over the place. RA21 is a fantastic example to try and solve this challenge of off-campus access. And a couple of years ago at STM, Robert Schoenfeld did a fantastic talk from the researcher's perspective about why this is a problem. I would strongly recommend you go find the video. Anna has come into this journal.com, same as Jeff, but she doesn't have credentials. She's not inside the IP range of her institution. So naturally, she knows that she needs to proxy into her library through the VPN. She just knows that, because everybody does, right? That's the first thing you think of when you're blocked from getting access to something. And then she's inside the library VPN, and she knows that she has to search the library catalogue. That's fine. She searches the library catalogue, and she finds the journal listing, and she clicks through, and she gets back to the journal.com homepage with library credentials. So now she's got to re-find the article that she was looking for in the first place that she'd landed on initially from her Google Scholar search. That's a highly simplified view of getting access off campus. So let's be realistic. Max is an undergraduate who has a paper that he needs to read for his next class. He arrives at journal.com without credentials and he says, well, can't be bothered with that. I'm going to Sci-Hub, or ResearchGate, or academia.edu, or Icon has PDF, whatever. There are so many ways to get access to content that don't require jumping through hoops. So, as an industry, we have a problem here. We're driving people away, and we're not learning from what other industries have already done. So there's a balancing act here. And the balancing act is between reducing the barriers to access on the one hand and increasing security to combat piracy on the other hand. A lot of the initiatives that I've seen coming out in the last 2 years are about increasing security to combat piracy. And if we learn from what the music industry have done, from what the video industry have done, we know and we should learn that reducing the barriers to access is a much, much better way to protect our investment in our content. There's a few different ways we can do that. So there's content sharing, boosting access to the version of record, and then there's off-campus access and actually solving the off-campus access problem. So let's have a look at some of these in more detail. Hopefully, you guys all remember the STM article sharing consultation. Hands up if you had input into that. Yeah, a few people. So, a couple of weeks ago when I was starting to prep for this, I looked up what had happened since the article sharing information went live, and there is now a fantastic resource called howcanishareit.com, which has a DOI lookup. So you can chuck in a DOI and you'll be told what you can share, how you can share it. It's great. How many publishers have put this information on their websites? How many publishers have actually got a link to this site anywhere on their journal homepage? I don't think many have really made an effort to publicize this, to encourage authors and readers to share legitimate content. So here's a challenge for the publishers out in the audience. Go back to your offices and look at an article page, not even the journal homepage, an article page, and figure out whether you can make it clear on that article page how a reader can share this content legitimately. There's also fantastic work being done by Springer Nature and by Wiley and by others for providing shareable links. So I know that this is, for Springer Nature, is facilitated through ReadCube. People can share legitimate copies of content, read-only, but legitimate copies of content. How about we explore whether this is a potential new freemium service? You've got read-only, and you can purchase, through micropayments, access to interactive versions of this content, for example. Just because we're giving something away for free doesn't mean it's worthless. Boosting access to the version of record. Google Scholar really does make it quite easy for us to do some of this stuff and to reduce these barriers to access. We just need to work with them to do it right. All right. Maybe they don't quite make it easy, but they certainly make it doable. So one of the things that you can do is show Google Scholar which versions of an article are available. So you can show access to the version of record based on subscriber links. Now, I know not every publisher is going to want to share with Google their subscriber base. I completely get that. But if you're not allowing people to see in Google Scholar search results that they have legitimate access to the version of record, you're, again, raising these barriers to access and encouraging people to go to non-legitimate sources. There's free article tagging. Google loves free. Let's face it, most readers also love free. So showing that an individual article is free through the metadata even if an entire journal isn't free, is going to boost the ranking of that article, is going to make it easier for people to access the version of record. Off-campus access. So I'm quite excited about this. When HighWire purchased Semantico in December, I learned that HighWire and Google Scholar have been collaborating on a new initiative called CASA, Campus Activated Subscriber Access. Too many hyphens in there for my taste, but it is what it is. So what happens here is that, say Max is in the university library and he accesses a journal on his own tablet, but he's inside the university library, so he's recognised as being within that IP. His tablet is then recorded by Scholar as being authenticated by the university IP range. And when Max goes home that evening and he needs to access that article again, or a different article, or something from a completely different journal, because Google Scholar recognises that he has previously been authenticated against his IP, they give him access if that IP is authenticated. It's a much, much simpler thing than asking somebody to jump through all the hoops associated with Shibboleth login, which, having tried it, is quite painful. And it's not difficult to implement. It's something that publishers can get on board with. And then I promised I wouldn't do too much of a plug, but very quickly, Sam Sigma is a new generation of the very old now SAMS technology that is an access management system that's been around since 2002. We have two really cool pieces of kit in Sigma. Roaming Passport does something quite similar to the CASA initiative in that it creates temporary links between a specific device and their institution, a user's institutional entitlements. But you can also create a permanent connection between an individual and their institution, so that Max, even if he's never ever taken his tablet inside the university library, can use his personal login and get access to that university's holdings. It's fine, it's easy. Plug over. RA21. I couldn't talk about access management and not talk about RA21. I'm not going to read all these out because the principles of RA21 were covered comprehensively yesterday. Now, personally, I think these are fantastic principles. I am slightly concerned that some of the ideas which are coming out of RA21 might actually raise barriers to access rather than lowering them. If we're asking researchers to jump through more hoops in order to get access to off-campus content, we're going to defeat the object of the exercise. We will have put a lot of time and a lot of money into something that's not going to work. So I'm sorry, this is all sounding terribly, terribly disappointing. There are things we can do. We just need to actually do them. Increasing security. This is the other side of the coin, and there are things that we can do here that will not necessarily increase barriers to access, but that will help us maintain security for our content. So IP cleanup, this is just a really simple thing. There are services out there that will help you do this. Let's assume that you have sold a subscription to your journal to a small institution in India, and they give you an IP range, and you put it into your access management system. And 6 months later, you're looking at the logs for this particular institution, and you're just thinking, holy crap, that's really high usage. I didn't think they had that many FTEs. And then you do some digging. You find out that the IP range for this institution actually covers the entirety of an Indian state, and you've been giving away access to your content completely by accident. Cleaning up your IP ranges and making sure that you've got the right IP associated with the right institutions, all the way down to the tiniest institutions, is a very simple step, and it can make a massive difference. It can also give you leads on new potential subscribers, so it could also increase your revenue. Sales agent due diligence. I'm sure Andrew's in the room somewhere, but Andrew Pitts from PSI, sat in the back corner over there, has spent a lot of time telling a lot of people in the industry about fraudulent subscriptions, fraudulent personal rate subscriptions that are then sold onto institutions and so forth. Doing some due diligence on your sales agents can really help to protect you against that. And I'm sure Andrew will talk to you about it later if you like. And then, of course, analytics reviews. There is a huge amount of information available in most publishers' platforms about usage patterns. Analyse those usage patterns, and if you see suspect patterns, if you see things like one institutional library will have a massive surge in usage for a specific journal on one day of the month, every month, that's weird. Speak to the librarian, ask the question, and if it is dubious activity, suspend the account. You can always reactivate it when the activity is resolved. And if we as an industry can collaborate to identify and share the information about dubious IP addresses, about dubious activity, we've got a lot more power to actually make a difference. If we're all trying to do it individually, we're going to miss things. There you go. That's it.